You guys know me. The ultimate soft spot in my heart is dedicated to any damn good looking naked bike. New, old, Japanese, European, pristine, ratty, whatever the case may be. And don't get me wrong, I like fully fitted sport bikes and all, but I don't want one, you feel me? Like for my use case, a cracked out, race-inspired, spine-bending, wrist-spraining crotch rocket with 5 layers of plastic covering it couldn't be more useless for me. But there is one specific bike that even I couldn't turn my back on. And the thing is, it's not even the newest bike out there. It's not even the fastest bike out there. It's not even the lightest bike out there. It's not the best at what it does. But the thing is, that stuff doesn't even matter when you're not blazing it at the track, right? Like in real life, you're gonna want a bike that you can actually stand looking at. It's like the H2, like the Ninja H2. That's a badass bike, no doubt about it. It's built with badass intentions and is, needless to say, is fast as hell. Thing is, that bike is pretty fucking ugly in my opinion. I don't know, it's just too heavy on the top. Looks like it skipped out on leg day or some shit. Moving on to not even nearly as fast as a bike as the H2, but god damn it, this thing is 24 years old and still killing it. And that's none other than the Ducati 916 from 1994. And because you've been such a good person for 2018, I want to let you just look at this thing for 10 whole seconds without me rambling on. Enjoy. Okay, for those of you who are still with me and didn't have to run away to change your undies, the 916 isn't the only bike that used this incredibly timeless design. The 748, the 996, and the 998 shared the masterpiece of a chassis designed by Massimo Tamburini. The design was so successful that Ducati was actually able to stretch it through 4 different bikes for 10 years until 2004, before they proceeded to then drop the ball, trip over the ball, and then break a leg by putting out that fucking hideously freakish 999, but that's a different story. Let me just give you a short rundown of the specs for the Ducati 916. Okay, it was packing a 916cc liquid-cooled L-twin engine with fuel injection, which wasn't too common in the sea of carburetors in 1994. The engine was a stroked-out, revised version of the 888 Desmodromic engine that came out before it. The 4-valve per-pot motor was putting out a base 114 horsepower at 9,000 RPM with, 103 horsepower actually hitting the wheel, which propelled the Duck to a top speed of about 160 miles an hour, give or take. Torque, which is where all the fun actually is, was a strong 67 foot-pounds at 6,900 RPM. And the bike weighed 429 pounds dry and was equipped with Showa front forks and an Olin rear shock. The bike was actually much smaller than the 888 that came before it, coming in at 81 inches long and 27 inches wide, with a wheelbase of 56 inches and a seat height of 31 inches. Okay. Who really wants to talk about this right now? Because it ain't me, okay? I just want to talk about the way this thing looks, okay? But yeah, it was lighter, it was smaller than the 888, and it was faster, whatever. Here's the thing, right? Ducati also did another thing better with the 916. They produced a bike that was ahead of its time. Look at the 888 and look at the 851. And what comes to mind? The 1980s, right? Just straight up cocaine, Hall & Oates, synthesized backtracks, and a 2-piece porn stash and mullet combo. Or is that part just me? That might just be me. My point being that the 888, when looked at now, it looks like a bike from 1987. And it looked great in 1987, I'm sure, don't get me wrong. It appealed to what was deemed stylish for the time with a few twists of awesome here and there. But overall, no doubt, this is a very 80s design. It looks good when viewed in the context of when it was made. It's like those guys who be like, hey, you're pretty hot for a fat chick. And not only is that a fantastic way of getting kicked in the shins, it's also looking at the subject in a certain context. The thing is, when I look at the 916, or any of its variants really, I think, damn, that's a sick looking bike, period. Because the 916 looked like it could have been drawn up fucking yesterday, Like maybe 2006, but not 1994. The reason why the 916 has aged so well is because it followed a completely different design philosophy. The 916 ran a trellis frame, which contributed to the bike's very svelte appearance. Twin spar frames with stress member engines were commonplace by the early 90s, and they were extremely efficient and beneficial for the also common inline 4 engines found in most sport bikes. But the thing is, these frames didn't really give off that feeling of the design integration that the trellis frame did on the 916. Because when the 916, fully clothed, it looks like it doesn't even have a frame beyond a few discrete pieces of tubing near the exhaust in the back and that long one going up towards the steering head. But beyond that, you don't really see any of the frame. And then the frame was also finished in a nice gold color instead of just using that natural gray, silver, steel color that most frames were running back then. And the bodywork wasn't like the bulbous and rounded edges of the early 90s. The lines were mostly sharp and aggressive, only taking care to include soft curves in the areas that showed a clear influence of a woman's figure on it. One thing I always liked about the 916 was that race-inspired white tail section. The thing about tails on early 90s bikes is that they were still very fat at this point. And don't get me wrong, I like a fat tail, especially on women, but only when done right. And let me tell you how Ducati got the tail right on the 916. The tail is actually quite fat on the 916. It's not really any skinnier than any other bike, but it got broken up by the white shapes that are integrated into it. Your eyes don't see the entire tail as one uniform shape, which is also aided by the sloped angle of the taillight area in the back and the undertail exhaust. Speaking of the undertail exhaust, okay, actually, getting close for this one, okay? A lot of Ducati guys, they don't like to admit just how much Honda had an influence on the design direction of the 916, with the NR750 that actually came to light in 1991, which is a couple years before the 916. See, Tamburini, the designer that I mentioned earlier, if you remember, and Ducati, they state that they were definitely influenced by, quote, existing designs. But I think it's pretty obvious which design they meant, even though they didn't explicitly say it, right? Like, I mean, the 916 is gorgeous, and it's distinctive among any bike of its day, but there was actually another bike that could also hold these attributes too, and that was the NR750. See, the NR750 was way ahead of its time, even more so than the 916. In terms of visual design, it broke the mold first, in virtually every way. And then when it came to the engineering part, it took the mold, set it on fire, and threw it off a fucking cliff. I actually have a segment on this bike in the problem with Japanese bike video. And I'm sure some of you remember that this is the bike with the pseudo-titanium V8 oval piston fuel injection. You know, this rolling bag of technological insanity. It was the first Japanese sport bike to be fitted with fully mapped multi-point EFI, which is fuel injection, and the first from any country to feature upside-down forks, carbon fiber bodywork, titanium anything, side-mounted radiators, and exhaust under the seat. Now, this is in reference to all of those things together, not individually, so don't think of it like that. It's like all of these things coalesced into this bike. The NR750 was a pretty insane bike, as you can see, and it actually hit the streets in 1992, which was 2 years before the 916. Now, the NR750 actually had a few distinct design elements. One, the single-sided swing arm, which was nothing really too special for Honda since they were running them since the mid-80s. The undertail exhaust, the slim waistline tapering back out into the tank in one direction and into the tail in the other, like an hourglass, basically, like a woman. The low and squared headlights, and that thick but angular tail. You're starting to see the similarities? See, the 888 that came before the 916 didn't actually have a single-sided swing arm, but the 916 got one. And look at those lines. Look at the exhaust. Like, I'm sure you get the point. The thing is, Ducati took cues from Honda, but I'll be the first to admit that they made those cues look even better. The 916 may not be anywhere near as advanced, high-tech, or innovative as the NR750, but it does look better, doesn't it? I mean, I just feel like the 916 kind of distributes the weight around the bike a little bit better. I feel like the NR750 is a bit tail-happy, if that makes sense. Now, at the time, they didn't directly admit the influence that the NR750 had on the 916, but some sources claim that later on down the line, Tamburini actually freely admitted that yes, it was the NR750 that influenced the team's design direction. The thing is, I can't actually find a direct quote coming from the man himself, and if you didn't know, he actually passed recently, so I don't want to state that as gospel, you know? So, the 916 was launched in 1994 alongside a smaller displacement sibling called the 748. The only actual difference being that the rear tire size was different and obviously the engine displacement was different. Other than that, the parts are identical, and the 748 ran from 1994 to 2002 uninterrupted with only a few variants. The 916, however, saw two more main iterations, the 996 and the 998. Actually, do y'all remember the freeway scene in The Matrix where Trinity is trying to get the keymaker away from the agents on that dark green Ducati? Pretty dope, anxiety-inducing scene, now that I'm actually a biker. I used to watch the Matrix movies over and over as a kid because they were the coolest thing ever, and I always liked how the bike sounded in that scene. Like, it sounded foreign. It didn't sound like a normal sport bike, you know? In 1999, the 996 actually came in 3 different forms. The base model, which actually gave you the possibility to bring a passenger, the 996S, which received Olin suspension, and the 996 SPS, which basically improved the bike in every single way, even the engine. The SPS later became known as the R version in 2001, before the bike platform was bumped up to 998cc for 2002. The Ducati 998 was the final variation of the 916, and it featured the new Testa Strutta engine, which, while it was pretty similar to the previous engine in the lower end, it actually had entirely new components from the crankshaft up. Ducati even actually made a homage to the Matrix scene with the 998 by releasing a limited run of a dark green Matrix version for the model year of 2004. The 916 family of bikes ultimately culminated into the literal Ducati 998S Final Edition, which signaled the end of an era. Only 981 of the Final Edition bikes were made, with 419 of those being two-seaters and 562 of them being one-seaters, both producing a base of 136 horsepower with that Tesla Shredder engine. Included standard was upgraded Öhlins front and rear suspension, along with a few distinctive markings like badges, graphics, and other visual touches. The 916 style definitely had held up into 2004, no doubt about it. But still, it was time for Ducati to move on to its next flagship bike. The 998, and more specifically the 998 SFE, was a worthy outro to the 10-year life of the 916. And with all of the models built in that 10-year life, it still holds a legacy as one of the best looking motorcycles ever built. Thanks for watching.